You're watching Study with Sudhir. This is your digital classroom. My name is T.S. Sudhir. We are going to look at Act 2, Scene 9, the casket scene involving the Prince of Aragon. We have already done the casket scene involving the Prince of Morocco. He chose the gold casket. That was not to be. And now the Prince of Aragon is going to choose the casket in order to win the hand of Portia in marriage. So in this scene, Act 2, Scene 9, we will look at what happens during this particular casket scene and whether Arragon is able to choose the right casket. Now this has been decided by Portia's father, as we know. Now it starts with the Prince of Aragon coming to inside this particular room which is in Portia's house and Portia telling Arragon that these caskets are there before him, and if his choice falls upon the casket which contains her picture, that will be deemed to be the right casket, and therefore after that, if that happens, he can marry her almost immediately. If not, if he chooses wrongly, he should depart again immediately without kind of engaging in any kind of conversation. Now in this place you would see Portia says, "Behold, there stand the caskets, noble prince." Noble essentially meaning the word in this context illustrious prince, and it also shows that Portia is being rather polite and courteous towards Arragon, just like she was to Morocco earlier. Okay, so that's what she says in this particular dialogue, that if you choose the right casket in which where I am contained, straight away our nuptial rights will be solemnized, that we will be married, otherwise you should depart immediately from here. Arragon, he says now he says that I am here to observe three particular conditions. And what are those three conditions? This particular paragraph is important, what Arragon is speaking from the examination point of view. So you would do well to kind of take notes and look at it carefully. He is basically saying that first, never to unfold to anyone which casket it was I chose. That is, he will never reveal to any other person which casket he chose on that particular day. Number two, if he does not win Portia, he will never in my life to woo a maid in way of marriage, that he will never ever woo another lady in terms of marriage in order to get married. And thirdly, lastly, if I do fail in fortune of my choice, immediately to leave you and be gone. And if he chooses the wrong casket, he should depart immediately from Portia's house without engaging in any kind of conversation or banter. Portia says, to these injunctions everyone doth swear that comes to hazard for my worthless self. Now calling herself worthless basically also indicates a very down to earth personality, a rather humble kind of personality. So an indication to her humility is what we know from this particular line phrase that she uses for herself, that she says that every suitor who comes to take this risk in order to win her hand must swear to these conditions. These three conditions. So Arragon says, and so I have I addressed me fortune now to my heart's hope, gold, silver and base lead. Who chooseth me, we must give and hazard all he hath. So he starts looking at the three caskets and whatever is inscribed on those caskets, right? So he says, first of all, that I am ready to comply with all these conditions that have been placed before me, and he immediately says, he looks at the lead thing and immediately dismisses it as calling it base lead. Base lead as in meaning to say worthless piece of metal. He says that who chooseth me must give and hazard all he hath. He says he shows his dislike for the lead metal casket, first of all by calling it worthless, and number two, basically it's a reference to the very dull and very plain appearance of the lead metal, and he says that it has to appear as something attractive before anyone, any suitor can actually decide to choose it. That is something very important. So he is very dismissive of the lead casket for the simple reason that he says that something which looks as plain and dull as lead can never aspire for any suitor to choose it. So in that sense, he is basically coming across as a person who goes by the outward appearance of that particular metal, and that's the reason he decides to reject the lead casket. Now he comes to the gold casket, and this is important also from the context of the reasons he gives for rejecting the gold casket and the reason for rejecting the lead casket, and that is something important which kind of points to a bit of a dichotomy in his character. What says the golden chest? Let me see, who chooseth me shall gain what many men desire. What many men desire? That many may be meant by the fool multitude that choose by show, not learning more than the fond eye doth teach. which press not to the interior but like the martlet builds in the weather on the outward wall, even in the force and road of casualty. Basically, he's saying, when he says many men, what many men desire, he's basically talking about the large population of people who actually go by the outward appearance of something which he has just spoken about in the case of lead, because he rejected lead based on its outward appearance, but he also rejects gold based on the outward appearance, because it says many people may get fooled by the outward glow and glitter of gold and end up choosing this particular metal casket. And he says that they are basically this kind of a foolish population. The foolish majority of men who go by the outward appearance are basically not wise people, and they judge only by the outward appearance and outward glitter in the case of gold, right? And he says that the untaught eye, he says, not by the full multitude that choose by show, not learning more than the fond eye doth teach, right? So basically he's talking about the fact that the eye never seeks the inner meaning of things, it looks at things and it is not kind of going into the meaning of what could be lying beneath that particular surface. It goes by what it sees, on the surface straight away, and it's content to focus on the outside, not look at the inside of the things. And he makes a reference to this bird called the martlet. Now the martlet basically is a bird which, what does it do? The martlet, it does not build its nest in a very sheltered kind of place where it would be very safe. The martlet is also referred to as a house martin in many places in Europe, and the martlet basically constructs its nest in the most exposed kind of a place where it is kind of susceptible, vulnerable to the outward weather elements, right, like sunlight or rain or harsh winter. It does not protect its nest and its little ones from the harshness of the various weather conditions, where also an accident may occur as a result. So similarly, he says that the people who judge by the outward appearance also make a similar error and get into a problematic situations. So that's the reason he decides not to choose the gold casket. He says that the impulses, the decision of ordinary men who go by this outward appearance basically conveys their ignorance, right? And therefore he rejects the gold casket. And then he looks at the silver casket. So now he has rejected both the lead as well as the gold casket. So it's very obvious that he's going to go in for the silver casket. Silver casket, he says, but I will not choose what many men desire, because I will not jump with common spirits and rank me with the barbarous multitudes. It's a reference to the common people in the case of the golden casket. But then to thee, thou silver treasure house, tell me once more what title thou bear. Who chooseth me shall get as much as it deserves. So the treasure house is because he believes that this is the one which is going to have the treasure of Portia's portrait, which is why he's referring to it as a treasure house, right? And he reads out what is written on this silver casket. And well said too, for who shall go about to cozen fortune and be honorable without the stamp of merit? Let none presume to wear an undeserved dignity of, oh, that estates, degrees and offices were not derived corruptly, and that clear honor were purchased by the merit of the wearer. Now this is an important piece of dialogue of Arragon, because it kind of gives you the reason why he decides to choose the silver casket. Now let's go through it. Treasure house I have already explained to you. It's because he is talking about Portia's portrait likely to be inside the silver casket, and therefore he refers to the silver casket as a treasure house. He also uses the word, he plays on the word deserves. Who chooseth me shall get as much as he deserves. Now deserves, basically Arragon interprets it as having merit, that you deserve something only if you are meritorious, if you are if you have something in you in order to deserve that particular object. So he believes that this particular description fits as far as Arragon is concerned, and he says that the honor of winning Portia's hand in marriage will go only to that person who has merit in him. Okay, and therefore there is absolutely no pride and honor without having the merit, and therefore he believes he fits the bill very well. And he says that he cannot be called an honorable man if he does not have merit in him. Okay. Then comes this other one of, oh, that estates, degrees and offices, again important from an examination point of view. In this particular case, estates is referring to rank, degrees is referring to promotion or a position, and offices is reference to appointments, right? So estates means positions of rank, of dignity. For instance, in Europe in particular, and especially in Britain, you would have the lord, the people are knighted, and then they are called sir something something. The word degrees refers to the social position. For instance, in the court of a duke, etc., there are earls and viscounts, etc. So that's a particular title which is given, which is what is referred to as degrees. And the third one is offices, which is more of a case of an appointment, which is the post of a responsibility in a particular kingdom. So Arragon says that the world would be such a happy place if all the positions of rank, dignity and offices were bestowed on the meritorious, people who are actually deserving, instead of it being taken by people who are not really deserving of that particular rank or particular office, right? So in that sense, he's also, this shows a slightly positive side of Arragon, I must admit out here, even though he ends up making the wrong choice, is because he's placing a lot of importance on merit instead of just people getting it because of some other extraneous reason. Now, were purchased by the merit of the wearer. Now, the wearer is basically referring to the person who holds these kind of titles, right? So in that sense, Arragon comes across as a person, as an aristocrat who believes in meritocracy, which is in fact, I would say, a kind of a redeeming feature as far as Arragon's entire outlook is concerned, right? However, there are some negative which we will touch upon later in this particular scene in this video lesson. So basically he is saying that if these titles and if these offices are given to people who are actually deserving of these titles and offices, then many a person who now with uncovered head, then how many then should cover that stand bare, how many be commanded that command, how much low peasantry would then be gleaned from the true seed of honor, and how much honor picked from the chaff and ruin of the times to be the new varnished. But to my choice, who chooseth me shall get as much as he deserve. I will assume desert, give me a key for this and instantly unlock my fortunes here. So he chooses to go with the silver casket. He basically means that these people do not realize that if they don't deserve honor, as they are not part of a noble family, nor do they have merit. He's basically referring to a custom that superiors could wear their hat, could keep their hat on in the presence of inferiors, but the inferior officer had to remove his hat in the presence of the superior officer. So in that sense, the hat became a symbol of honor, it became a symbol of respect, it also denoted rank in that sense, right? So the inferior officer who would remove his hat would actually, his head would be bare, which is what the reference is to stand bare. So he says, how many be commanded that command? Basically he is trying to say that if all these ranks and titles and offices are given to those people who actually deserve those offices and titles, many people who are actually issuing orders right now would actually find themselves in the place of those who do not have them, in the sense that he is basically making a reference to people who are getting those titles without actually being deserving of them. So he is making a very strong commentary on the manner in which different places actually work in terms of giving the titles to people who may not really be deserving of those ranks and titles. Now, the seed here, from the true seed of honor, the seed is a reference to the next generation, to the offspring, to the children. That's what is a reference out here. And the gleaning is again a process of taking out the seed from the chaff, right? The chaff is separated from the grain by threshing or winnowing. We would have seen it in any rural areas if you go, how the seed, the process of chaffing, the winnowing is actually undertaken, the process of threshing is actually undertaken, especially in case of paddy, in case of wheat as well. And he says that if honor and distinction were bestowed by merit in this particular world, many worthless people would actually find themselves without a rank or a title, and many people from these lower ranks would actually come to occupy those positions of authority. He says, so therefore I will choose the silver casket. So Portia says, too long a pause for that, for that which you find there. What's there? The portrait of a blinking idiot presenting me a schedule. I will read it. How much unlike art thou to Portia? How much unlike my hopes and my deserving? Who chooseth me shall have as much as he deserve. Did I deserve no more than a fool's head? Is that my prize? Are my deserts no better? So he chooses the silver casket because he is absolutely convinced that he has the merit, that he deserves Portia. This is the operative line, this is the operative reason. But he finds in the casket the picture of a grinning idiot, okay, with half shut eyes, with a paper in it. And Arragon is obviously extremely disappointed and rather agitated on not seeing Portia's portrait inside the silver casket, right? He says, he pauses for a while because he has opened it, and then he has paused because he is absolutely shell shocked, which is what Portia is making a reference to. He says there is so much of difference between the picture of the idiot there and the picture of Portia that he actually hoped to find inside the silver casket, right? And he asks Portia whether he deserves nothing more than the head of this particular fool, this particular idiot. And he wants to know whether that's what he has got, that's his prize, and whether he deserves nothing more than that. And Portia replies saying that, see, you made the mistake of choosing the wrong casket, and therefore you are not entitled to, you are not supposed to criticize the rules of the competition, because you entered this contest, entered this competition knowing fully well what are the 3 rules of this particular competition. And he says, she says that the person who receives a sentence, in this particular case Arragon, and the judge who pronounces it, in this case her late father, are obviously never the same people. And therefore she says that, before itself she had reminded him of the conditions with which he will actually choose and open the casket. And she says, no man is a judge in his own case. To offend and judge are distinct offices and of opposed natures. Arragon, what's there? And now he reads what is written inside in the hand on that note which is there with the fool's head. The fire 7 times tried this, 7 times tried that judgment is, that did never choose amiss. Some there be that shadows kiss, some have but a shadow's bliss. There be fools alive, I was silvered over, and so was this. I will ever be your head, so be gone, you are sped. You are sped means you need to now go immediately. Basically to say that this particular silver metal was actually tested 7 times by the fire, and fire is something which is believed to purify. So they believe, the scroll says that this particular silver metal is absolutely pure and has been tested 7 times by the fire. And he says that a mind which actually makes an error of judgment must also be tested 7 times. So basically saying that his mind was obviously not absolutely perfect. So the scroll says that some people find happiness and they actually follow unreal kind of stuff, and their happiness is therefore also very, very unreal. And it says that in Arragon's case, that their foolishness is actually hidden by their silvery hair, because silvery hair kind of denotes a lot of experience, a lot of wisdom, but it's only a dikhava, it's only a put on, it's only something which is of a make believe, but actually the people are actually quite foolish. But the silvery haired nature, the appearance of the person ends up giving them a more of an intelligent and a wise look. Okay, and one of these is the fool's head, which is concealed in the silver casket. Arragon will always have a fool's head. He should take his leave, as now his chance is over. So basically to say that he is not wise because he made the wrong choice, and it's only he may appear to be a very intelligent person in terms of appearance, but is actually not so, right? And Arragon obviously gets over his disappointment and decides to leave immediately, saying that I will keep my oath patiently to bear my wrath. Basically to say that it's my misfortune that he could not win Portia's hand in marriage, and therefore he will leave immediately. He's obviously very resentful, but again someone just like Morocco, he does not make a fuss, because that is also one of the conditions which Portia had made very clear before the competition started. Now what does Portia say after that? Thus had the candle sinked in the moth. So basically she's again happy, relieved that Arragon did not choose the right casket. Sinked is basically a reference to the moth, which kind of burns itself in the candle because it comes attracted by the glow of the fire on the candle. But again she says that Arragon is like an insect that has fluttered around the candle but ended up burning just like a moth does. Oh, these deliberate fools, when they do choose, they have the wisdom by their wit to lose. Basically she is referring to him as a fool who gives a lot of reasons for choosing the wrong casket, in this case the silver casket. And the right choice, she says, does not depend on reasoning, on this kind of elaborate reasoning, but on basic feeling of love. And she believes that both Morocco and Arragon did not have that basic instinct of love, but were basically trying to go by a whole lot of reasoning in which they believed that they deserved, both Morocco and Arragon believed that they had the merit in order to open the right casket, which they actually did the wrong casket. But basically they believed that this particular inscription is meant for them, and that was the wrong way of interpreting the inscription on the golden casket in the case of Morocco and the silver casket in the case of Prince of Arragon, right? So basically that's what Portia says immediately after the Prince of Arragon leaves. Nerissa says the ancient saying is no hearsay, hanging and viving go by destiny. Ancient saying is basically a reference to an old proverb. It says hearsay is basically a false kind of a teaching, and viving is the basic thing of getting married, getting a wife. So Nerissa says that the old proverb obviously is very right, because it is fate that decides what will happen to any one of us, whether one is supposed to be getting married or one is supposed to be hanged. Hanging and viving goes by destiny. Just then a servant enters the scene and announces that another person has come right now, and who has given his salutations and is making a very gracious speech. And Portia says to the servant not to speak, basically saying that a young person from Venice has come, a young Venetian, one that comes before to signify the approaching of his lord. So it's obviously Graciano who has come to announce the arrival, the impending arrival of his lord, in this case Bassanio, from whom he bringeth sensible regrets, to wit besides comments and courteous breath, gifts of rich value, yet I have not seen so likely an ambassador of love. These are lines said by the servant to Portia and Nerissa, who is also there in the room. So basically he is saying that he is of a gracious kind of nature, who has come to announce the arrival of his master, of his lord, right? The messenger is Graciano. So basically what does this scene reveal about the Prince of Arragon? So generally in the examination, one of these three casket scenes always comes: Bassanio, Morocco or Arragon, right? So these three are important for you to know. If you are able to do one of these three very well, you can be assured of at least one question to crack in the examination. Now basically it shows that he carries the family pride, he's very proud of himself. He really believes that he is meritorious and deserving of Portia's hand in marriage. So in that sense, that is what leads him to a sense of complacency, that I am deserving, so obviously I will choose the right casket, right? And the reason for him to reject the lead casket is because he also, though he says that the outward appearance is only chosen by the foolish majority, he himself is belonging to the foolish majority, because of which he ends up rejecting the lead casket right at the first instant. He also makes rather pompous kind of claims about himself, right, and talks about the foolish majority, is rather scornful and really looking down upon a whole lot of people who he says make the wrong choice in life. But the scroll in that sense shows him his place by referring to him as a fool who, despite having the silvery hair, is actually very, very foolish. Portia, it again shows that Portia is very courteous, knows how to speak the right things, but again she is very relieved when she realizes that this Prince of Arragon has ended up making the wrong choice as far as the casket is concerned. So that's as far as this Second casket scene is concerned involving the Prince of Aragon. I hope you have understood it very clearly. There are certain portions which are obviously more important from an examination point of view. So I would request you to kind of make notes depending on what I have told you and ensure that you are able to revise it at regular intervals. Merchant of Venice needs rigorous studying. It's not something which you can study today and expect it to remember all on the day of the examination. You will need to revise it many times over in order to get comfortable and familiar with the Shakespearean language and its translation in the kind of English that we speak today. Thank you very much for watching.